Hey there and welcome. Today we are popping the hood on the most important and maybe most complicated piece of machinery you'll ever own, your brain. And we're going to give you the owner's manual you never knew you needed, all thanks to one single gene. So let's get right to it and give your brain the tune-up of a lifetime. So just imagine for a second that your brain is a high-performance engine. Could be a classic, could be something totally cutting edge, but here's the catch. It's the only one you're ever going to get. So to keep it running smoothly for the long haul, you absolutely have to know what kind of engine you're working with, and crucially, what kind of fuel it needs. And this engine, well, it wasn't just built randomly. It came with a very specific genetic blueprint, a design that dictates pretty much everything, from its biggest strengths to its most hidden vulnerabilities. And that blueprint is a gene called apolipoprotein E, or APOE for short. Think of it as the master spec sheet for your brain's metabolic engine. This one gene basically sets the rules for three huge maintenance jobs: how your brain moves fats around for energy, how it takes out all the metabolic trash, and how well it responds to fuel in the form of insulin. Now, just like a car maker might offer a few different engine options for the same car, genetics gives us a few different models of this APOE gene. Straight from the factory, you get one copy from each of your parents, which means you end up with one of three main versions. So let's check out the lineup. First up, you've got APO epsilon 2, which you'll see written with the Greek letter epsilon and the number 2. We like to call this one the protective shield. It's pretty rare, but it's linked to a much lower risk of Alzheimer's. Next, there's APO epsilon 3, the neutral baseline. This is the most common model out there. It's reliable, it's efficient, it just does its job without much fuss. And then there's APO epsilon 4, the metabolic liability. You can think of this as the high performance model. It's powerful, but it's also incredibly high maintenance, and it turns out it's the single strongest genetic risk factor for late onset Alzheimer's. And when I say high risk, I really mean it. For people who inherit two copies of that ApoE4 allele, so one from mom and one from dad, the risk of developing late onset Alzheimer's can be up to, and you're gonna wanna hear this, 15 times higher than for someone who doesn't have it. Yet, this chart really puts that risk into perspective. It shows what's called a gene dose effect. So if you have one copy of the E4 allele, your risk goes up about 3 to 4 times. But with two copies, look at that jump. The risk just skyrockets up to 15 times the baseline. Now, it's really important to remember, this is not a diagnosis. It's a risk factor. It's a piece of information about your engine's design. And knowing that design, well, that's the first step to properly maintaining it. So what is it about this high-maintenance ApoE4 engine that causes it to falter? Well, it really boils down to a couple of key performance issues that can create some major traffic jams on the metabolic highway of your brain. So yeah, the ApoE4 system is just really prone to creating these metabolic traffic jams. And there are two main reasons for this. One has to do with getting rid of waste, and the other has to do with getting fuel. Let's break this down. Okay, first up is the clearance failure. Your brain is working 24/7, and that work creates waste, including this sticky protein called beta amyloid. Now, the ApoE2 and epsilon 3 engines, they're like a team of super efficient street sweepers, clearing this stuff out really fast. But the ApoE4 engine, it uses a much slower, way less efficient pathway. This creates a bottleneck, and it lets all that metabolic trash pile up on the curb, which can eventually form those toxic plaques we associate with Alzheimer's. And the second big issue is what we call the trapped receptor. In a healthy brain cell, you have these insulin receptors that move to the cell's surface to grab fuel. Simple enough. But in an ApoE4 brain, the epsilon 4 allele messes this process up. It basically traps those receptors inside the cell. And what that means is the brain cells just struggle to get the energy they need. They're literally starving for fuel and can become insulin resistant. It's kind of like having a clogged fuel line. Okay, so we know there are different engines, and we know one of them is particularly high maintenance. This brings us to the most important question of all. How in the world do you find out which model you're driving? Right? Because you can't just tell by looking in the mirror, and your standard blood work from a physical isn't going to show it either. You need a specific diagnostic tool that can look directly at the genetic blueprint itself. And the answer is actually pretty straightforward. The test you need is called an APOE genotype blood test. It's a simple blood draw that your doctor can order for you. It uses standard DNA sequencing to read your genetic code and tell you exactly which APOE alleles, the epsilon 2, epsilon 3, or epsilon 4, you're carrying. It is a direct look under the hood. And getting this information is just incredibly empowering, because the moment you know your engine type, you unlock your personalized owner's manual. You're no longer just guessing about maintenance, you're operating from a place of real knowledge. As the source material puts it so perfectly, bioregulation requires precision. We do not guess. And knowing your ApoE status, well, that's the ultimate form of precision. It lets you stop guessing about what's best for your brain health and start making targeted, data-driven decisions. And that kind of precision leads us to what is probably the single most critical safety rule for brain health, especially when we're talking about nutrition. We call it the stop/go rule for brain fuel. And here it is. This is your decision matrix, the absolute core of your owner's manual. And it's so simple. If your test comes back and shows you do not carry an ApoE4 allele, you get a green light, a go, for using fuels like MCT or coconut oil. But if you are an ApoE4 carrier, that's a hard stop. Your manual says to avoid high saturated fats like MCT oil, and instead you stick to extra virgin olive oil. And maybe the most important rule of all, if your status is unknown, you play it safe. It's a stop. You default to olive oil. And here's why that fuel choice matters so much. For non-carriers, MCT oil can be this fantastic super fuel, giving brain cells an alternative energy source. But for ApoE4 carriers, whose engines already have a tough time with lipid metabolism, just handling fats, those same high saturated fats can completely backfire, cranking up inflammation and dysregulation. For them, and really for everybody, extra virgin olive oil is the safer, more protective choice. You see, understanding all of this isn't about being scared. It's about being in control. It's about taking the wheel and actively driving your health in the right direction, using your personal owner's manual as your guide. So let's quickly recap the key takeaways. Number 1, the ApoE gene is the blueprint for your brain's engine. 2, having the ApoE4 variant just means you have a high maintenance engine, but it is absolutely not a life sentence. 3, a simple blood test can tell you exactly which engine you have. And finally, that knowledge gives you a personalized owner's manual to make precise choices, like choosing the right fuel for your brain. This is the bottom line. As one of our key sources puts it, the ApoE gene determines the metabolic maintenance schedule. Knowing your genotype tells you if your brain needs a standard checkup or a more rigorous high-performance tuning schedule to stay in peak condition for years to come. This is powerful, actionable information. So really, the only question left is, how are you going to tune your engine for the long, beautiful road ahead? Drive safely, and thanks for joining us in the garage today.
Remember, we don't manage behaviors here, we regulate biology. I'm the Boomer Biohacker. Keep the engine running. Like, subscribe, and share. And don't forget to hit that bell for updates. We'll be posting regular biohacks.